welcome you all to this month's Skill Builder. This month, Barbara Akers is going to be showing us the technique, the skill of pyrography. I'll get it eventually. As we go through this, if you have a question, please just let me know so I can get you the microphone. That way, people who are watching this at home will also hear the question as well as the answer. So, thank you.
Okay, welcome to the world of pyrography, a world I've been in for 17 years or more. Pyrography, also known as wood burning, poker work, painting with fire, has been around since Egyptian times, or at least they think so, because we work on wood, a lot doesn't survive over time. So they do have known works from the Peruvian people. They used to decorate their gourds for tea that they drank from with pyrography. We also have samples from the Middle Ages. There is the harps. They used to decorate the harps like the Queen Mary harp in Scotland and the Trinity College harp in Ireland. So you can see old pieces. You can go online, you can check it out, see what they were doing back then because they didn't have this. So up to Victorian times, they would heat tools like pokers or wires to do their burning. So you can imagine it took a long time, and they would have to do something to protect their hands if they were using wires. In 1890, there was a compact version of a benzene-fueled tool that they could use to heat up and do pyrography. So there was like a surge and an interest in it during that time up until about the 1920s. It wasn't until the 1930s that they came up with electric solid tools. And then in the 40s, they came up with the wire-tipped electric tools, which pretty much between the two is what we still use today. So I'm not going to go any more into the history. Suffice it to say that it's been around for a long time. For a while, it was mostly decorative. It wasn't done as an artwork. Well, it is an art form. You can do a lot with it. The wood tool, or the wood that I use is usually Italian poplar. I really like it. It's very light wood, has very little grain. Also there's birch, so some of my pieces are in birch. You can do beech, sycamore, something that's light with very little grain. You can do pine. The problem with that is if they don't dry it well, pine weeps. And then you end up with this sap, and this sap ends up on your tools, and that's not a good thing. I had a friend who had that happen. Beautiful wolves cubs that she was doing on this plate, wooden plate, and it just started leaking all over the place. You can also do it on ivory, which, no, but it can be done on ivory, it can be done on bone and antlers. However, if you're picking up antlers from the woods, you're going to need to wear a mask because they usually have mold in them because they've been sitting there for a while. You can also do it on togwood nuts. You might see little tiny wood burnings, usually like as a pendant or something. That's the togwood nut. You can do it on watercolor paper, either cold press or hot press. Just know that you can't go really deep in it because you'll go right through it. Let's see. Ooh, they said you can also do it on teeth. Maybe an animal's tooth, not, a shark's tooth maybe. So let's talk about some of the tools that we use. I'm getting a little bit of feedback here. The solid point is what you mostly see in Hobby Lobby and Michael's. Those are the walnut, I think it's Walnut Grove. You'll see that. Some that have a potentiometer that allows them to change the temperature. But the original tool that came from them, you plugged it in and that's the temperature you got. You used it maybe in Boy Scouts to sign things, that your little carvings or something that you were working on, or on leather work. The solid tools are good. I've seen people do fantastic pieces, but if you want to do really tiny detailed work, you're going to need something that has a finer tip than what you get with that. So the wire tipped, which is basically what I'm using, comes in variable temperature. So what you're going to see is, this is my favorite. The company is out of business, so you can't get it anymore. It's American made. It's the Nibs burner. This is a dual. I've had this 17 years. It's still working. I just got this. I have no idea. It's called WEP, and it was on Amazon, and I thought, oh, let's try this in case this guy dies. It just arrived in the mail this morning, so that's why nothing's put together, and I have no idea how it's going to work, but it got good reviews. On the other hand, as you can see on these, we have, I can take these off, put them on, or you'll see them over in, I don't think I pulled the one out on here. You'll see them over on the ones over there where we can actually take the tip off. They have like an adapter, and you can take the tip off and you can put it on and change it out. These will last a long time. This, and I'm not sure how long they'll last, and I haven't seen yet if they have replacements for the tips, are the wires that you have to hook up. I think razor tip is similar to this, where you have to screw the wire tips in. I don't have a razor tip. I have a Coalwood. Those are Coalwoods over there, which you'll get to try later. But you can see they have a little, can you see that? Up against the white. Oh, I guess you can see it up on there. Okay. You can see it has two wires that will actually go in, that you will screw in to this end. And you have to screw them right, because if you don't screw them right, it's not going to heat up. That much I do know. I haven't used it yet. And you'll notice that they do come in different types. I'm going to put that back there. They'll come in different ends, depending on what you want to do. The same with the tips that I have here. I've never met a tip I didn't like. I have way too many. I have, these are called shaders. Can you see them? They're flattened like an iron, and they allow you to burn a larger area. And they do literally that, shade. You can also use the sides, the edges and stuff to do lines if you want. This is one of my favorites. It's a pinpoint. It literally is as if I took a safety pin and poked you with it. It's a pinpoint. I have one that's slightly rounded as well. This is for doing pointillism, or working into very tiny, tiny areas. I have, and you'll get a chance to come up here and look at all of them. Here's another type of shader that's square. I've only used it a couple of times. It takes a little while with every tip that you have to get used to what it can do and what you can do with it and what you want it to do. And sometimes you find that for all the tips that you have, you use just 3 of them, the most. And I even have some, which is up here somewhere, that's what's called that's not it, a fish scale. I think it's this one. Yeah, this one here. You could actually make dragon scales or fish scales with it. They come in different sizes. So if you want to, can you see that? I can't tell from there, but you can see. Curve? Oh, okay, I can see over there. Do I need to move? It's just rolling away. Can you see how it's curved? And the amount of curve, some of them curve more, and they come in different sizes so that you could do gradation on your scales. I haven't used it yet. I've had it for years. Because I was going to do a dragon, and I haven't done that yet. I'll probably get to a fish before I get to a dragon. But anyway, they even have one for doing feathers. It literally goes like this. It's like a spring, and it heats up and it makes perfectly parallel lines. And they have those in sizes too. Skews. Skews are they're for doing grasses and lines. Rounded skew, if you notice its heel, which is this part here, is curved, it's round. There's regular skews that aren't. And I can tell you from experience that as you're going like this, if you don't keep it tipped up slightly away from you, you're going to hit that heel and catch it, and then you're going to have this big burn, looking burn mark on your piece of wood. So I use and this is my favorite because it's very, very fine. I can do very tiny lines, and this is actually a razor tip. And though I don't own a razor tip, I have an adapter cord that I use so I can use it on this or a Coalwood that allows me to use the razor tip pens. There's a number of them of companies that did do adapter cords because people wanted their tips, but they wanted to use their wood burner. So taking care of your pieces, because these, obviously you're heating them up, it's going to get carbon scoring on them. And then they don't heat well and transfer and they don't burn, or they leave a charcoal mark behind. So you need to clean them. There's 2 ways to clean them. One is using a strop like this, leather strop, and some aluminum oxide. You put a little bit down and just rub it until it's shiny, and then just wipe it off and it's fine. The other, don't use sandpaper. The other is, I thought I had it sitting over here. Is it still in here? Well, I'll just run over here and grab a piece. It is like a sandpaper kind of, but it's not. This one's fine. It's made by Crocus. But you can just rub it on here, and you can watch it get shiny as it removes your carbon scoring. And they're not too expensive. They last a long time. So, I forgot when I was talking about what we can burn on. We can burn on cork. Have you ever done? Now, I'm not sure what to fix it with yet, because this would be a coaster, but you know what cork does when it gets wet. It gets all stainy and ugly looking. But you can burn on it, but it burns real easy. So leather does the same thing. You go up too high of a heat and you just burned a hole right through your piece of leather. If you're going to do leather, vegetable tanned leather only, because the others are chemically tanned, and when that happens, you're burning, you release fumes, and you're going to knock yourself out or give yourself cancer or something else. Okay, so let's go to, now that we've talked about that, doing the actual burning, transferring or creating your designs. There are books, I have them sitting out here, some books on gourd burning and a few Pyrography magazine and a couple of the big names back, well, I think they're all retired now, but the big names in Pyrography. And they would create patterns for people to use. That's how I started that I worked from a pattern. But that wasn't enough. I actually am an artist, scientist, but that's what I make my living at, but I do the art on the side. And so I want it to be original. I want it to be something I can sell in the galleries, because I should not be selling somebody else's pattern, and even though I did the work on it. So I started with the pattern just to learn. It's a good way to learn, because then you don't have to worry about creating the picture, all the other things that come with that. If you can't draw, that's an easy way to get started, and then you start doing your own stuff, the things you have, the ideas you have. And so that's where I went after I was comfortable enough with the tools and what they can do. So when it comes to creating your piece, you can either draw wood with a pencil, which I've done. That piece down there is a combination of a pattern I created of the trees, and I just free-handed the cliff. So you can do it that way. It's easy, and you burn right over, and then you erase away any marks that you didn't cover. Otherwise, you're going to have to transfer a pattern to the wood. So this is some stones that I transferred over. And it probably looks like gibberish to you. I know how to read it, but I can get more detailed if I want, but it tells me where the parts are that I want to go into. And I used a transfer paper. I laid that down here somewhere, but it's a graphite transfer paper. I laid it down there so you can see. And there's a couple of different graphite ones. One's a very waxy kind of one, and it doesn't come off well. Alcohol works on it. Rubbing alcohol, not the kind you drink. And then the other one is a true graphite, and the problem with that is it's a little lighter, so it's a little harder to see, but it's easy to run your finger across and accidentally erase your marks. My favorite to use, which for a while I couldn't get a hold of, they used to have it at Hobby Lobby and Michael's, especially Michael's, is chocolate paper. This is blue chocolate paper. They have white. That was still available during COVID. I wouldn't put white on a light wood because I wouldn't be able to see it. However, I discovered, because nobody said anything, I did a big piece, 2 foot long, foot wide, and had all these trees in there, and I used this to transfer my pattern on. And I got busy with life, and 3 months later I went back to work on it, and it was gone. Luckily, I tape my things on until I'm done with the drawing. So I've learned, put it down with the charcoal paper, then just go in with my pencil and retrace and get what I want. But I do like it, unless you're going to get it done within 3 months, and then you don't have to worry. Okay, so is there any questions right now about the makes? Like I said, nibs is not out there anymore. Razor tip, this new company called WEP, and Coalwood are the big names right now in wood burning that you can find. There was a couple others, but I'm not sure that they're out there anymore. You know, you think, oh, I can go buy that because you can still find them on the market, but they're probably what's left over from their heyday. And sometimes you can get some good. Yes?
Where do you usually get your tips from?
Okay, that's a good question. Okay.
Where do you usually get your tips from?
I used to get them when they had the Kansas City Wood Carvers show. We'd have a vendor come in and I could get some from them. You can get them at our sponsor. What are they called? Woodcraft. Woodcraft will have some, or they can order it for you. You can go online and you can find them from Coalwood themselves, if that's who you want to go to, or Razor Tip. And then also a lot of small companies that sell the wood and the pyrography tools can get them for you. There'll be probably a slight markup in the price since they're going to send it to you. And there's also down in, but I know they're buying them online and they just carry it. But there is some, and I think they're all Coalwood, in the Knot Hole, at the Knot Hole. But that's about an hour drive. So, at least for me, it's an hour drive on that. So that's where you can get your tips. Also, keep an eye out when you go garage hopping when they have the garage sales. You sometimes will find stuff like this for a really good price. And they range. Coalwood has a cub, which if you're just starting out, it's a little one. It's a good one to start, especially if you're going to do it with a child or whatever. They want to start that. You don't have to spend a ton of money. They're around $80, 65 to 80, somewhere around there. When I bought this, it was 17 years ago, and it was 160. The Coalwoods that we have here at the Guild are they run around 175 for the kit, but they come with like 5 or 6 tips with them, as well as a little cleaner here and the case and everything. So you get it, something to start with there. And they're a dual. No, they're a single. They also make a dual. The nice thing about a dual is if you're going back and forth between 2 things, you can have 2 different ends on there, and you can just switch back and forth. One of the things is on using these that we talked about, putting the pattern on. You got your pattern on, now you get to work with this. Be aware that even though it goes up to 10, does not mean you should be going up to 10. Yes, I can make flames at 10. I can put it on and it'll go like that. And you better stand back because you're going to take care of your hair. But it will also wear these out faster, the wires. These are not a heavy duty wire. So I usually don't go more than 4.5 on this. This one is actually a heavy duty wire. So I will go, I could go up to 9, 10 with that. And I tend toward the hotter ones because some days your electricity just isn't flowing like it should, and it takes a little more to get it up to the heat you want to get the burn you want. Or you end up being at a lower burn and keep going over repeatedly, like layering and painting. You're just layering the heat on and getting it darker and darker. Takes longer. When you're going to do painting, especially with a shader. Remember, as soon as you touch that, it's burning. So if you don't want dots as you touch the thing going in because you to the wood, you're going to want to think of an airplane, landing, taking off. So you're just going to come in like that as you do it, so that you're moving as it touches down, so you don't end up with that blot mark. Okay, any other questions before we start? Because I'd like to have plenty of time to everybody to try out the tips. How many people here actually have a wood burner? So we got 2 people with wood burners. Oh, you have one, but you've never used it, so it's sitting there collecting dust, huh? I understand. I have a lot of art tools and things that I bought, and it's like, well, I haven't used them. I've had them for a year. Maybe I should have bought them. The thing with also turning these on, a safety feature, if you're walking away, turn them off. Don't leave them on, because shooting, somebody's going to come along and burn themselves. The plus side is that once they burn themselves, they've cauterized the wound, so you don't have to worry about blood. So I have been burned by my students. So, and I've burned myself, not very often though. So, when you get to start on it, you make sure it's zero. So you turn it on. In the case of, let's see, we're going to go shading, and I'm going to actually go to what? Trees. I do a lot of trees. Oh. Can you see it okay? When you turn it on, make sure you've got it pointing to the one you want, which is this one here, and that you don't have this turned on. You shouldn't have this turned on at that point. Have it at 0, then turn it on, then bring the heat up. When you get ready to turn it off, turn it down to 0, then turn it off, just the reverse. Okay, that protects your unit, that protects your wires, protects your end, and that protects you from screwing up and touching something. These take about 7 seconds to get hot, just so you know. The solid ones from Hobby Lobby are going to probably take a minute or 2 to get to their maximum heat. I like to use the shader for the trees, because they do a good job. I can get it done more quickly. And I always have a piece of scrap, preferably in the same wood type, so I can check it. Do you like the eyes? So we're going to go ahead. Now, I know that I'm not sure what the pull on this is going to be. I don't have other people working off of it right now that I know of. That makes a difference too. When I teach classes, I'd have people, 4 people working off of a line area, off of a circuit, and they'd be vying for the electricity and fighting over it, basically. They'd have to turn up hotter and hotter to get it, which then made it worse for others, and then so they'd turn theirs up hotter, and then we had this war. So you can see it's burning pretty dark. That's at 3, so I'm getting a good burn. Keep in mind physics. When you take something that's hot and you touch it to something, you're transferring the heat. This will lose the heat. So if you're working along and suddenly you're just not getting a burn, hold it up for a few seconds, put it back down, and then you'll have your burn again. And if it's too dark, then you won't want to go to turning it down to adjust it. So we'll just work over here on this part here. There's this piece here, and it's a shadow. And you can move your things around. You don't have to keep it in one spot. You can see it's already darker right there where I first put it down, and now it's getting a little lighter, but that's okay, it's a shadow. They get a little lighter out here anyway. And you'll keep working it down until you get what you want. As dark as you want, or as far as you want. Now, what happens when you make a mistake? Any ideas? Little boy, what would you do if you made a mistake when you're burning? Any idea? Well, yeah, you can start all over. And so all that work of transferring, yeah, that's why you don't want to make a mistake. Plan it out well. You can sand it a little if it's just to lighten it. Keep in mind you're pushing, though, the sanding bits into the fibers, and eventually it'll be kind of grayish looking and not too pretty. Or, you're gonna give them the answer? Scrape it. You can take a knife. I have a few tools that I use. I don't have the one that I really like because it was a cheapy little thing and fell apart, but it was perfect and I never found another one. But you can take something like this and you can scrape it out. When I do like whiskers and stuff, if I want some light against the dark of the fur, I can use something like this just to scrape the line, and there's your whisker, without trying to go around on either side for a very, very, very thin line. I shouldn't point that at myself. So if you were doing the shadow, this is how you would do the shadow. There's another shadow down in here in my tree. Now, one of the things is I talked about you can use the side. You can do grasses with that. You can get that like that with the side. Or you can use your skew, depending on what it is. I will use this a lot of times as I get to the thinner branches. So if I was going to one of my thinner branches, there's one there, I would turn it more to the side, like this, so I can get in, I can get that dark undershadow. On it, so I'm not actually going flat. And then as I get further out, I can go more and more to the edge here. But I'd actually like my rounded skew because it curves a little better on that. So the last time I did a demo, I was doing a tree and I ended up eventually going back and finishing it to make it into an art piece. It's slowing down a little. And I could just stay all day just doing this. You'd be bored stiff watching me, but I would be going, oh, I'm having fun. It's kind of zen. But I warn you, when you go to stand up, you realize you've been sitting there for 2 hours not moving and your knees don't want to work. So with the tree, that's how I'm going to do it. I'm almost always going to use this. With the leaves, it can be different depending on these particular leaves. Based on the size, I'm going to be doing more detail, the shape of the leaves. One thing I've discovered, because I did one of those insane moments when you say, why did I think that was a good idea? The 2-foot piece that I was doing was covered with leaves. It was fall, leaves all over the ground. And I'd still be doing leaves if I did every one today, 10 years later or whatever, if I was doing every single one. This is an artist's trick. Get some detail in on a few leaves and then scrumble. What is scrumble? You take your writing nib here and you scribble. That's a scrumble. You'll scribble shapes and put a little kind of like shadow things. And the human eye the human brain, I should say, isn't as smart as it thinks it is. It looks at that, it sees those detailed leaves, and it says, oh, these are all leaves. No, it just scribbles like a little kid. But it works really well for that. And just remember putting in a few. So that's what I will do with these, is I will be going in and making some detailed leaves, and then it'll be just a case of gestures and scribbling. And you'll look at it. That's what those trees on, those are scribbles for those leaves on that tree. And for that one, the second one over from the right, those trees up there are all scribbles. And the rest of that is pointillism. That was what I first learned, was pointillism. It takes a long time to do pointillism. However, there's something satisfying to see this very beautifully textured, where'd my piece go with the stone? Oops. So if I'm going to do that, I'm going to now turn this down, switch it over. And you can use different sized ones. Thank you. And it doesn't take as long for these tiny ones to heat up. Those shaders have a lot of metal that they have to fill with heat. So you might find them taking longer. Okay, I already got it. And I don't know if you're going to see that up there because it's pretty tiny. But what I would go in is I'd look at my stone and I'd say, oh, here's some stone, and I'm going to be just doing this, dots, continuous dots. Yeah, it takes a long time, and I might go up higher. How do you make the dots lighter? How do you make it lighter without turning down the heat?
Don't press as hard.
Pardon?
Don't press as hard.
There's that, or, no? Well, there's that too, but then you risk the chance of don't put as many. Now you want to get something really solid, you start putting your dots closer and closer together, holding them in maybe a little longer, and then you finally get, and I don't know how well this is translating up there. You might have to come and see it. You start to get a darker look. So like I want something that's really dark down here. Or you go to a slightly different tip. I have some that are a little bit bigger and I can bring those in. You can also, I didn't have a tip tool when I first started, and my pointillisms were really, if you look at them, those pointillisms were actually a sharp skew that I turned backwards and just like this. They're actually little lines. But you don't realize that because your eye just blends it all together. So I'm going to get this darker here because it's a little bit of a shadow. And also keep in mind, you're burning down into the wood. So you will actually have some shadow coming just from where the light's hitting it from there. So it'll make things look a little darker depending on the angle you are at. I want to switch it out to skew. So you're going to have to do grasses. You can do pointillism on grasses too. Again, it's going to take a while. But if I want, where's my little guy? So I have some grasses in here and maybe some of the tinier grasses that I want to work with in here. I can smell that. Oh, that one's burning hot. Like I said, it's a very fine. So you're going to take it and you're going to say, okay, I want to get this grass in here. With that heel, I can curve it, which you can't do with the ones that are like that. You forget the curve. You're not going to get there. But turn it around, you've got a good dotting tool. So now I would work with that and that. Pick another one. And again, if you're going to go in a direction that you think is going to be difficult, you see I held there too long. Do you see how it started to burn outward? That's the other thing. The hotter you get it, it's going to scorch on either side. So keep that in mind, because if you have an area you don't want, to have any color, then you're going to have to scrape that out, those scorch marks out. And I've had to do that with trees and things like that, where I got a little too heavy-handed. But I got to finish that one on that. Okay, there's this one here where you're going to go up and you're going to follow it. I'm going to curve it. And you can, with some of these tools, use it like a shader by taking it to the side and just kind of scraping along like that. You can see I didn't sand this thing really well, so it's going to have all those, make a nice water ripple, but yeah, a little water ripple. But you have to keep that in mind that you may not get the nice smooth that you would with the shader on it. And sometimes it's easier to go with the grain than pull down against the grain. Just like when we carve for the, well, there's no carvers in here, are there? A little bit. Okay, you don't, if you go against the grain, you're going to snap a piece out. You're going to have difficulty. It's going to be rough. It's not going to look good. You have to flip it around so you can be going with the grain again. And even sanding, aren't we supposed to go with the grain when we sand? So yeah, and that's what I do. I do the same thing here when I'm prepping the wood. That's the other thing, prepping the wood. Sand it, get it as smooth as you can, because you don't want to have it catching on anything. Avoid a lot of grain, because grain doesn't always burn the same way. I did a piece that it had a very soft grain. Sometimes it's very hard. I had a very soft grain. And I had to be careful because when I got to the grain, I had to lift it up and decrease the temperature because it wanted to go down, and that would not have been a good look. It would have just been this big burn spot in a commissioned piece. And then I had one that was too hard. It was a pine, and they wanted lettering and the Boy Scout symbol and stuff. And I was working on it, and as soon as I hit that, and he wanted it in pointillism. So yeah, I was doing the whole thing in pointillism. And so I would get there, I had to go back over multiple times just to get it dark enough so that it matched the wood above it. So these are things you have to consider. That's why we tend toward things, because pine can be pretty, you're going to get a lot of grain in sometimes. I go for the Italian poplar whenever I can, because the grain, while you can see grain, it's kind of spread out and it's light and it doesn't burn differently than the rest of the wood, thank God, on that. Animals. So animals are a challenge. I'd done animals, and one of them was to get a darker area where the shadow was. I'd put the hairs closer together, or burn a little deeper, or use a wider thing. And I was just, because I was still teaching myself at the time when I was doing it. And my daughter, 16 years old, says, "Can I try that, Mom?" And I was at a show, and I said, "Sure." And she handed a whole painting in about 2 hours. She's very talented, but she said she didn't even ask me anything about doing the shadows. She took my new tool, my new shader, the first one I had, and she shaded the areas that were dark. Then she went in with the skew and did the hairs on top of it, and dang, it looks good. And so I've adopted that. Let's see, I had a cat here, yeah. I've been wanting to do this cat. It's Maine Coon. And these are photos. All these things are photos that I took. So it's all my work. So if I want to trace my photo, I feel no problem about that. As an artist, they talk about don't trace and all this kind of thing. Artists trace songs. They had their tools that allowed them to trace the things on when they were trying to make something this size into a big mural and things. So yes, we all trace. So this guy's got a lot of fur and a lot of dark. So I'm just flip this over. So get this a chance. So I'm going to start around one of the lines here that's coming up here. Let's get up a little higher. So going into here, and here's something else I didn't bring that one over. I may pop this on top of there so that I don't accidentally, because this is that really nice graphite that erases like crazy, and I don't want to erase what I put down, which is usually why I keep things taped to it, so if I have to retransplant, I can do that, retrace that down. So there's this nice little dark thing of fur right there. So I'm going to go into there. So I'm moving it faster. When you move it faster, it doesn't burn as dark either. Slow it down, it's going to burn. Just want to get enough of this here that you can see it. So coming in, I want to come next to it. I'm going to come into it. I'm going to turn this down a little because it's pretty dark. And I'm going to trace those little hairs that are running in through here. And then I don't have to worry about it being too light. And then if you reverse it, put your hairs in, then take your shader and go over it, you flatten all your strokes and they start to disappear. So you want to do it the other way around on it. So when I give you guys a chance to start looking at stuff, you can see this stuff closer and see the fine lines. It's hard to see fine lines sometimes on a TV, unless they get like really close. Anyway, different textures. So you got the fur texture, you've got the stone texture, which I could do that as a shader too. I don't have to, or I can do it a combo. I personally, and you'll see it on that, the stone steps, I like the dotting. It gives that rough that you see on stone, and it makes it look more like stone than if you just did the shader. But maybe for something in a distance that you're not able to see up close, the shader would work fine. Okay, so let me turn this down. So with the blanket that's behind him, it's a little fuzzy. I would use a shader still, and I might even go in and do a little stippling to give it the fuzzy look. And you notice I'm moving even as I come down. I'm not just holding it there. Now I'm doing it lighter. Now with this, because there's lights and shadows on there, I am going to be either changing temperature. I might even go in and scrape a little. I might even sand a little on top to get it loose, but it's going to be minimal. If I'm going to sand with it, I have tools. I think they were, did I put them over there? I have these nice little sand tools that I like to use because they're small enough on one end that I can get into tiny places on that. But you're going to bring this down. And you notice I'd go back into what I've already burned on these things so that it blends. Otherwise, you're going to look like lines of, which is, if you want that, that's fine. If that's what you're looking for. But if you're trying to do something a specific way and you don't want that, then you don't want to do that. But you're going to just bring that down. And this is going to give it a much different look than what you get with the hairs, the rough coat. I've done a wolf, and he had a lot of bunched fur and stuff, and I used this technique on it, and it really turned out really, really well on it. Another commission piece. So for setting, I don't work on it every day, but that probably had 80 hours in it, just because of all the scrumbling that I had to do. It could have been more, but then there's the whole finishing thing, which we haven't even gotten to. That one took me a couple years because I got a commission that I had to get done, which I did in about 6 months. She thought I could do it in 2 weeks, and I'm like, yeah, no. And sorry, you'll have to wait till your brother's next birthday for this. But I'm not sure how long. I probably have 40 hours in that little 8x10 that's the second one over. The one that's on the far right didn't take as long. It was this tin roofed shed that I passed on the highway. It was like one of these click as I go. The carving one up over there, that took a little longer because I'm a slow carver. I don't do a lot of carving. And in that case, I was using it as which a lot of carvers do, they use these as an enhancement for doing fur. They'll carve the fur in, then they'll take their tool and they will, their wood burner, and they'll go into there. So it gives more layers of hairs to it than just the carving in piece in, and get finer and stuff like that. I used it for the flowers and part of the butterfly for the body. I did the pointillism on the body to make it look kind of fuzzy a little bit, like some of them are. That might have been too moth-like when I did it. I did it for that flower, which I'm looking at that flower, and that was one of the first times I used color. And I was like, I need to go back in there and make that center darker. Which if I do that, because it's already got a finish on it, I wear a gas mask, which I look very ridiculous. But I put that on, and then I can do it without having to worry about breathing in the fumes. I mean, it's harder on my tools to go back and do that, but sometimes I have. Finishing on wood burning, you have to realize that this is wood, and it's going to fade. Unless, if you want to slow down that fading, you burn really dark. I have one, my very first burning I did, it still is as dark as the day I did it. Because as a new person, I'm burning deep because I wanted to be sure I got it right and everything, and I'm heavy-handed. When you go into the finer, more gentler burnings, you can lose that. So you need to make sure that you use a finish that is UV protected. I did not on the second one over. It's kind of yellowed. I also didn't use the very good stuff. The stuff I used on it didn't have the UV protection. I had to go back and reburn that. That piece, the original burning of it, took a best of show in a fine art show. And I was just devastated when that happened. But I went back in and I reburned the whole thing. I've had a couple pieces. That's how I learned that don't do that. Put the best finish on it that you can. So I get a UV matte spray, and I spray it 2 or 3 times. After it's dried, I'll go over it with a non-yellowing finish. I used to do semi-gloss. I love semi-gloss. You can't find it anymore. Have you noticed? You can't find semi-gloss paints. You can't find, everything is satin or eggshell or gloss. And then that's the same with the finishes. The ones that are still out there are like furniture finish, but they're not non-yellowing. So I don't even go to those. So I have to switch to the satin or go to the gloss. The problem with the gloss is you make a mistake, that gloss is going to emphasize that mistake. So if you have something where you know that's kind of not the best, but it looks good, stick with a matte. They won't see the difference, because that gloss is going to bring out, if it's got a lot of grain, it's going to bring that grain out. I had to do that with an elephant box that I had burned, and it was basswood. It should not have had all the grain it had, and it did. And I had a wood carver tell me, oh, it's going to look like a zebra. And luckily I went to my teacher and I asked her, and she's like, use a mat. You won't notice it. It took first place in the animal wood burning. And that guy had to eat his words. I was so happy. And he actually did come and apologize. But it's the stuff that you have to think about, not just, it's a planning thing. Like anything, any of your projects, you plan it from start to finish. You don't just wing it. I do a lot of winging in my art, but don't do that. Not with my wood burning, I don't wing it. I plan out. I know the size of piece I'm going to do. I know the pattern I'm going to do. I know I'm going to be editing. When I did the big piece, I edited as I was transferring it down, and then I edited as I burned. Oh, it needs some more branches, so I just stuck them in, that kind of thing. I moved a tree over because it was in the way. So you just got to plan so that you have what you want on it, and you have to plan your finish. And if it's going to be like live wood, I don't have any of my live wood pieces here. The big commission piece that I last did was an old VW bug on a platform bed, and it was rusting out and everything like this. And I called it. The title was "Make Me an Offer." I had to plan all that out because there was tons of vehicles behind. It was at an old car show, old VW show up in Weston. And so I had to plan out, I don't want that there. I'm turning that all into trees. So I don't have to do all the vehicles. I had to do the truck. I kept the truck that was hauling it, and I kept, of course, the bed and all that there. And I made some changes over here. I put bushes over there so I could just get rid of no people in it. Thank God there weren't any to begin with, but I wouldn't have put them in. You just have to plan that out, and then you have to say, okay, and this is the finish. And it was live wood. Live wood will chip off, just so you know. The bark does chip off. I was gluing bark back on it periodically because I was moving it around a lot just to work on it. Pieces like this, you're going to frame them, because this is plywood, thin little veneer kind of type things. So you're going to have to frame it, and you have to consider the framing. Wood burning has this beautiful kind of old style look to it. So if you put an old style frame on it, it looks great, but some people don't want that in their house. They want modern. So a lot of times I go to the more modern, slightly modern frames like the plain brown, because then to them it looks modern and not something that grandma had in their house. So color, you can put color into these. That is that one that's the mandala is watercolor. And there's tricks to doing watercolors, because if you know anything about wood, it's porous, it's got fiber, you put a color down and it's going to run, like a watercolor, it's going to run right up the wood along with the fibers. A burn stops that. So anything that was burnt, that watercolor couldn't go into. It stops it there. But you also want it to absorb nicely. And I learned that wet the wood first, then go in with the watercolor, and it just spreads beautifully. You can use oil paint, oil pencils, poly something. I have some, I haven't really used them. I've played with them. I got a little piece over there that's got different colors on it, and I was trying different finishes. I even found out you can use chalk pastel, and it goes into the wood really well, and then you just cover it and it stays on there. It's something I'm going to use in the future. The piece I'm working on here, this is something I've started. It's from a painting I did. The painting I did was big, and for some reason I thought making it small was a good idea until I started burning it. And I'm like, I can't get into those little places. But I'm working with it, and I want to put color in it. So all the places that are burnt will not color much. So it's going to be a muted coloring on it. It's not going to be as bright as that orange is on it. And then you have to also, that's the other thing, you got to put a finish on that's not going to make it run onto your next piece. I did a piece like that. I put the finish on. It was really neat. Light color, put the finish on. Luckily, it was a little tiny piece. And it worked. It looked okay, but the color ran all through the piece because of the finish. So you have to think about these. There are websites. There are pyrography groups that do some fantastic stuff. I'm jealous of these people. And they can give you hints of what they've used, what they find works, what doesn't work. Just like when you're coming in here and you're trying to make a piece and you're trying to figure out a problem with it, there's probably somebody sitting right next to you who could give you the answer because they've done it before, or they've talked to somebody, or they saw a video and they know what the answer is, even if they haven't done it themselves. But that's kind of how I work with it there. I'm trying to think of anything else. I mean, I have some other stuff. I have a person I'm going to be doing. I've done some people. Just two, well, three, but the other was from the back. You just saw her back. That doesn't count. One was a stylized, and then the other one was the person who taught me how to carve. And it turned out really well. I wanted to do pointillism because it would be so cool to get that, but I didn't have much time, and I wanted to get it to her before she died. Unfortunately, I did not, but her daughter got it, and I ended up doing a shader with it instead of the pointillism. But it turned out really well. I'm going to try to do my daughter, see how that does. She'll let me know if it's not good or bad. Try not to do people with their teeth showing. Teeth are always hard to paint, and they're even harder to burn so that they don't look like zombies with their teeth. So let's see, were there any other questions right now, or we can go over and I'm going way too fast. We're going to be done but that gives you more time to come over and look at things. I got this, yes. I'm going to turn this off. So over here, like I said, I have got the books. I've got what patterns, a smaller version of the mandala, so you can see how the patterns work. Some of these are patterns from from these books and things like this that they provide. When I teach, it's just for them to use. They're not selling the stuff, they're just using it to learn the technique. Some I've made up myself, and then I didn't burn it, but I sat there and I sketched it and put in shadow and stuff. Those are the.
Where do you teach?
Well, I used to teach at the Knot Hole, but I haven't in a couple of years. I've done just things off and on. I taught a couple times up a long time ago in Liberty at Martha Lafitte Nature Sanctuary. In fact, that's where that is, Martha Lafitte. And then I've taught for a wood carvers group in Topeka just recently. They've been talking to me a little bit about doing it here. So if there's enough interest, I'd do it here, you know. It's a little different when I've taught in the past. I let everybody bring in what they want to do, or they can pick from patterns I've got. So everybody's doing something different. But that also means a lot of them don't necessarily finish their piece, you know, which means they really would have to have a follow-up session after the first 2 times, or 2.5 days. I usually would do like a half Friday and then all of Saturday and Sunday. And then if they can't get it finished, we'd have to do a follow-up just so they have it. I know here everybody does the same thing, the same piece, which is a possibility too. You just have to pick out a piece that's going to, you know, give enough technique things. Usually the barns are pretty good with trees and stuff around them. Or you can do an animal. They get to work a lot with fur, but they don't get to work with a lot of the other. But on the plus side of that, you only usually need 2 to 3 tips to work with. So depends on what people would like to do or what I decided we could get done in 2.5 days on it. And I can usually take up to 10 people. It keeps me busy, but and with those I was actually also teaching them how different strokes to work on. So they got to practice on that and do a little tiny piece, and then they started their transfer to get their piece ready so that the next day we could actually start. That's how I've done them in the past. I don't think this is a good example over here. I was using it as a demo here that we did in the wood carving SIG. It's not my pattern, but you see here's the drawing, and then here's starting the burn, and then here was putting the color in. So you got to see the process broken up. It's not up there. Got it? Let me put this out of the way so I don't rub it off. Can you get it? It is up there because I don't. Oh, okay, there. So there. So this part here is the drawing. You just pencil. This part here I started putting in, and this one was more of a line type thing and less of a shading or anything like that. So it was pretty much done with lines and then with closer lines together and then some dots for the little, the stamen and all that and the ends of them. And then here's with the color put in. And this was done with a watercolor, very light, very minimal. It's kind of a cool one because you get to do a little bit of the stuff. If you make the background back, you get to work with the shader, get to work with the skew, and the end of the skew or a point, and then you get to actually put color in on that. And it can, something small like this can be done in a day, easy on that. You can go bigger and get it done in a day. It depends on how fast people are on doing it. I've had people that were very, very slow like me, or they were very, very, very fast, and they had 2 of them done in the end of the first day and wanted to know what was next. So that's what I gave the guy this. He's like, oh, I'm done. Well, what else can you do? I was like, okay, you challenged me. I'm challenging you. Here's this 8x10, and you're going to put color in it. Yeah, he was hooked on wood burning for a long time before he retired. So what I'm going to have you guys do, you can come up and you can take a look at stuff here, but I'm going to turn on these so that you can come over and try a wood burner. If you've never tried a wood burner, don't press hard because it will burn down into it. So you don't have to, you just have to touch. I'm going to put them on the lower heats about round 3. Anything higher than that, and you will probably bend. That's something else. You can bend your tips, intentionally or not intentionally. And I had that happen. My daughter was going too hard. And as she went there on the shader, she kept turning her hand this way. And so the thing went from a 45-degree angle to a 90-degree angle. Not good. It was my favorite shader. And so I took pliers and I was trying to get it back into shape very carefully. I wasn't careful enough. And this is my shader. It has no end. You may or may not see it. I'm just walking around. Oh, you got it? That's my shader. It's gone. It snapped right off. I learned you can still do that method, but you put it onto your wood burner. You turn it up to a 1 or 2, about a 2 actually, and then it heats up, it gets pliable, and you just start doing it that way very slowly, and you get it back into the position you want. So yes, you can move. And I couldn't find that exact shader again, of course. But anyway, so yeah, so you have to be careful. These tools, you know, if you get them too hot, they turn red. That's a signal that you better turn the heat down if your metal's glowing. So I'm going to go ahead and turn these on. There's a piece of wood at each one, a little tiny piece that you can work on. It's been sanded. You can doodle on it in any way you want. There's 4 different tips, one on each one, so you get to try different ones. This is what they call the writer tip. You can do it for dotting, or you can actually write with it, or as I used on the trees, scrumble. This one over here is a shader. It's a little bit different than it's not a solid shader like my other ones are. It's more of like a horse, or like a hoof, an animal's hoof kind of look. Might put that one to 3.5 because it is a little more metal to heat up. This one over here is one of those ones that you could bend and make it into a round shader, but please don't. You can use this like a skew. You can make lines with it because it is curved all the way around. Or you can kind of bring it a little on its side and shade a little bit. And this last one is a rounded skew. It's thicker and bigger than the one that I was using over here, but it does a nice line. You can do straight lines, you can do curving lines with that because of the rounded edge. So I'll give them a few minutes, actually it's about 10 seconds with those. Was there any other questions? I mean, we can go longer. I can sit and do wood burning over here, and you can sit and watch and be bored if it's dots. I'm just doing pointillism, or I can't think of anything else that I left out. Let me know if you're interested. Ooh, feedback. Let me know if you're interested in a class. I will go ahead and see about setting up with them. You're welcome to come and look closer at the paintings. You can flip through the books to see what's there. Trying to think of anything else.
Any questions for Barbara?
I would be interested in the class.
Okay.
Repeat the question, please.
How many do you have working on at one time?
Oh, when I'm painting, I'm often with 2 going on. When I'm wood, I tend to focus on 1, just because it takes so much time on it. Unless I get stuck with a commission, in which case I have to kind of divide my time up. And depending if I'm in the mood, it's like I don't want to work on that commission. I've been working on it. I want to see it again. And then I may go and work a little bit on one of my pieces. But usually it's 1 at a time for that. And what's this?
What technique maybe was done on that? Any idea?
I have a question.
Oh. Go ahead.
So when you're like wood burning, do you have to like draw on it first, or can you just wood burn?
You could wood burn, just wood burn on it. If you have an idea in your head, just realize that if you make a mistake, you're not erasing it, you're going to have to decide how you incorporate it or fix it. I had a piece that actually had a chunk taken out of it, and they replaced it because they were assuming it was going to be used by an artist and they'd be painting over it and nobody would see that. I was doing a tree scene. You cannot find that. You can't see that line of where a new piece was dropped into it because I just sat there and worked it so that it just wasn't there. But yeah, you can. I mean, I do that a little bit with my, when I talked about editing while I burn, I will start going off the pattern and making more branches and stuff. And you say that this, well, it looks like a burning. It looks like a burning that was done, but I'm thinking maybe before it was done, before it was wrapped. Or is this the wood itself? That's the wood itself, isn't it? Well, it had to have been, they may have done the burning while this was wrapped with the string that goes around it. When was this done, do you know?
No, it came from Four Corners, just a piece. And I'm just curious, the technique, if it's a wave of flame with a pattern, over it, or if that was...
More of a rand, maybe more, they were turning it as if this is a burn and not natural to this wood shaft, if it was, depends on how old this is.
It's not, I suspect it's 10 years.
Okay, so this could be a veneer that was placed on whatever's underneath, which the pattern was already into the veneer. It does have that wood burning look where you have the scorching. Some of it looks like actually the wood itself.
I'll figure it out, hit a knife on it, see what comes on.
Oh, well, yeah, you can do that. You can scrape it and see if paint comes off or if it goes down deeper into it, and then you'd know. Just do it in an area that you won't see. And don't accidentally hit these ties on it, or you're going to have everything the fletchings come off. So it is, but it is. It definitely has a wood burn feel or look to it. That is pretty.
Are there other questions? Okay.
Did you want to come over and start to try?
Well, let me
Oh,
thank you for
oh.
thank Barbara for coming up and doing this. If you are interested in class, please let me or Barbara know, and we'll try to get one set up for you. Also, next month, if you'll come back next month, we're going to have a skill builder on incorporating stained glass into your woodworking, and Terry Johnson is going to be doing that.
Didn't stand up for that reason.
Well, that's what you're standing up, so there you go.
Wow,
And before you leave, do take a time to check out the materials up here and also to try out your hand at wood burning.
Yeah.
Or pyrography.
Pyrography.
Whatever.